I evicted my parents on a Tuesday morning, just after 9, while the coffee was still too hot to drink. My mother stared at the paper in my hand as if it were written in another language. My father didn't look at it at all. He looked at me instead. Really looked at me for the first time in years. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again, as though he were testing the shape of my name and finding it unfamiliar. "You can't do this," my mother said. Her voice had that brittle calm she used when she thought volume alone would shatter glass. "This is our home." I nodded once. Slow, careful. "It hasn't been for a long time." That moment, sharp, surreal, quiet, was the end of a story that began when I was very young, back when I learned that love, in our family, was a limited resource, and I wasn't the one chosen to receive it. When I was 7, I understood the hierarchy. My older brother Daniel was the golden child. He didn't have to be told. Everyone else told me for him. Teachers praised him. Neighbors admired him. My parents orbiting him like planets around a sun that burned just hot enough to leave the rest of us in shadow. Daniel got piano lessons. I got told to be quiet while he practiced. Daniel got a new bike when he turned 10, bright red, with silver spokes that flashed in the sun. I got his old one a year later, rusted chain, cracked seat. When I pointed out the difference, my father smiled like I'd made a joke. "Be grateful," he said. "Some kids get nothing." Gratitude became my job. Money was never discussed openly, but it lived in the walls of our house. You could hear it in the arguments after midnight, to the way my mother whispered numbers like prayers. You could see it in the receipts left on the counter, the way my father circled totals in red ink. And you could feel it in the choices. When Daniel wanted to go to a private high school across town, my parents found the money. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, my homework spread out in front of me, listening as my mother said, "It's an investment." When I brought home a letter saying I'd been accepted to a summer academic program, free tuition, just a small housing fee, my father didn't even look up from his newspaper. "We can't afford extras," he said, "but—" I started. My mother cut in gently, which somehow hurt more. "Daniel's expenses are higher right now. You understand?" I nodded. I always nodded. By the time I was a teenager, I'd learned the math of our family. Knowing if Daniel needed something, the answer was yes. If I needed something, the answer was silence, followed by a lecture about sacrifice. I worked my first job at 15. Grocery store, evening shifts. I handed most of my paycheck to my mother without being asked. She took it with a tight smile and said, "You're helping the family." Daniel didn't work. He needed to focus on his future. At dinner, conversations bent toward him naturally. His grades, his plans, his dreams. When I spoke, it was like tossing a pebble into a river. No ripple, no pause. Once, when I was 16, I asked my father if he'd help me open a savings account. "For what?" he asked. "College," I said. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. "Community college is affordable. Don't get ahead of yourself." Daniel went to a private university 2 years later. My parents remortgaged the house to pay for it. I remember standing in the driveway as they loaded his car. My mother wiped tears from her cheeks, proud and trembling. My father clapped Daniel on the shoulder. "You're going to do great things," he said. Daniel hugged them both. He didn't hug me. He just nodded, distracted, already halfway gone. I stayed. I went to community college, took night classes, worked 2 jobs. I learned how to be invisible and efficient at the same time. I learned how to survive without asking. Years passed like that, quiet, uneven. After graduation, I moved out, rented a small apartment, and slowly built a life that didn't include them very much. We spoke on holidays, birthdays, obligations disguised as affection. Every time I visited the house, it felt smaller. Not physically, emotionally. Like the walls had absorbed all the words that were never said. Daniel came and went. He failed at one business, then another. My parents never mentioned the loans they gave him, but I saw the strain in my father's jaw, the way my mother's hands shook when she paid bills. Still, the pattern held. When Daniel needed help, the family rallied. When I succeeded quietly, promotions, savings, stability, it went unnoticed. Or worse, resented. "You've changed," my mother said once, watching me park my modest but new car in the driveway. I smiled. People do. She didn't smile back. As my parents aged, the tone shifted slightly. Not warmer, needier. My father began calling me for small favors, computer issues, paperwork, banking questions. I helped. I always helped. It felt easier than reopening old wounds. One afternoon, as I was leaving the house, and I overheard my parents arguing in the living room. My mother's voice was sharp, panicked. "We can't keep doing this," she said. My father replied, low and tense. "What choice do we have? He's our son." I stood in the hallway, keys in hand, heart beating slow and heavy. I knew, without knowing, that something was coming. A shift. A line about to be crossed. At the time, I didn't realize how close we were to the moment that would finally force the truth into the open. I just felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the old warning I'd learned to trust. Something was being decided, and once again I wasn't being asked. The betrayal didn't arrive with shouting or slam doors. It came quietly, wrapped in politeness, disguised as a favor. My mother called me on a Sunday evening. Her voice was softer than usual, careful, like she was choosing each word from a fragile shelf. "Could you come by tomorrow?" she asked. "Your father's been worried about the house." The word house landed heavily. That house had been the center of every sacrifice, every excuse. I told her yes. When I arrived the next afternoon, both of my parents were already seated at the dining table. Papers were stacked neatly between them, aligned at the edges as if order alone could make the conversation respectable. Daniel wasn't there yet. That should have been my first warning. My father gestured for me to sit. He didn't smile. "We're getting older," he began, "and we need to make sure things are arranged." My mother nodded quickly. "Just practical matters." I looked at the papers. Legal documents. Thick. Official. "Arranged how?" I asked. My father cleared his throat. "Daniel's been struggling." Of course he has, I thought. He always was, in ways that never seemed to cost him anything. "He needs stability," my mother added. "And the housing market is, well, you know." I waited. I'd learned patience in this house. My father slid one document toward me. "We want to put the house in Daniel's name. For now." The words settled slowly, like dust after something breaks. "For now," I repeated. "It's just temporary," my mother said quickly. "On paper only. It helps with a loan he's trying to secure. Once things improve, we'll revisit." I felt something tighten behind my ribs. "And where does that leave you?" My father waved a hand. "We'll stay here, of course. Nothing changes." Nothing ever changes, I thought. Except who pays. "And me?" I asked quietly. My parents exchanged a glance. A familiar one, quick, dismissive. "This doesn't really involve you," my father said. I laughed once. I couldn't help it. "It involves the family home." My mother reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of touching my hand. "You're doing well. You always have. Daniel just needs a little help catching up." There it was. The old story. Polished. Reused. "I need you to sign as a witness," my father added, tapping the paper. It's just a formality. My stomach dropped. You want me to sign away the house to him? No, my mother said too quickly. You're not giving anything up. You were never. She stopped herself. Never what? An owner? An heir? I pushed the paper back toward them. I need time. My father's jaw tightened. There isn't time. That was when the front door opened. Daniel walked in like he owned the place already. He looked older than I remembered. Tired, but still confident in that effortless way that had always protected him. Hey, he said, glancing at me briefly before focusing on our parents. Did she sign? She? Not you. Not my sibling. Just a function. I stood. I'm leaving. My mother looked startled. Don't be dramatic. Daniel frowned. What's the problem? The problem, I said, meeting his eyes, is that you're taking something that was never offered. He scoffed. It's just paperwork. You don't even live here. I looked at my parents. They didn't look back. I left without signing. For 2 weeks, no one called. Then, on a rainy Thursday, I received a notification from my bank. A routine alert. Except the amount listed wasn't routine. A transfer had been made. From an account I recognized immediately. My parents' emergency savings account. The one I'd helped them set up years ago. The one my name was still attached to, because they'd never gotten around to changing it. The money was gone. All of it. My hands trembled as I refreshed the screen. The recipient name appeared clearly. Daniel? I called my mother first. Straight to voicemail. Then my father. He answered on the 4th ring. You took the money, I said. No greeting, no softness. Silence. Then a sigh. It was necessary, he said. For what? I asked. To secure the loan, he replied. Daniel needed proof of assets. You stole it, I said. We're family. My mother's voice cut in. She must have been on speaker. We didn't steal anything. That money was for your care, I said, for emergencies. This is an emergency, she snapped. I felt something inside me finally tear. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean, final rip. You didn't ask, I said. My father's voice hardened. We didn't need permission. I hung up. The next time I went to the house, it was different. The furniture was the same, the walls unchanged. But something fundamental had shifted. Daniel's shoes were by the door. His jacket hung on the coat rack. He was moving in. My mother smiled too brightly when she saw me. He'll just be here for a while. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You'll get over it. I looked around the room where I'd grown up feeling like a guest. I thought of every paycheck I'd handed over, every yes I'd swallowed. You crossed a line, I said quietly. My father didn't answer. They thought that was the end of it. They thought I would do what I always did. Leave. Stay silent. Accept. They didn't know that the moment they took the money, the moment they put everything in Daniel's name without my consent, they created a trail. And I was finally paying attention. For a long time after that, I didn't do anything. That's the part people don't understand when they hear the story later. They imagine rage, screaming phone calls, lawyers contacted overnight. They imagine a dramatic shift. What actually happened was silence. I stopped answering calls. I stopped driving past the house. I went to work, cooked dinner, folded laundry. I moved through my days like someone carefully avoiding a bruise, gentle, deliberate, pretending not to feel the pain radiating underneath. At night, though, my mind wouldn't rest. I replayed my father's words. We didn't need permission. I replayed Daniel's voice. You'll get over it. I kept thinking about the money, the account, the way my name had still been attached. Not because they respected me, but because it was convenient. That detail mattered more than I realized at first. One evening, about 3 weeks after the transfer, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a mug of tea growing cold beside me. I logged into the bank portal again, not because I expected anything new, but because I needed to understand exactly how it had happened: dates, authorizations, signatures. That was when I noticed something odd. The transfer hadn't been a simple withdrawal. It was tied to a document upload, a requirement for the loan Daniel was applying for. The bank had a copy stored. I clicked the attachment. A scanned contract opened on my screen. My name was on it, not just listed, signed. My breath caught so sharply it hurt. I zoomed in, staring at the signature line. It looked like mine at first glance. Same looping curve, same slanted letters. But it wasn't mine. I knew my own hand. I'd written that name thousands of times. On checks, forms, notebooks when I was bored. This signature was practiced. Careful. Too careful. Like someone copying from memory. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, trembling. They'd forged my signature. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my ears. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thin. This wasn't favoritism anymore. This wasn't neglect. This was a crime. Over the next few days, I dug quietly, methodically. I requested records, downloaded statements, cross-referenced dates. Each discovery added weight, not shock. There was more. And the house deed had been transferred into Daniel's name 2 months earlier than they'd told me. The temporary arrangement was a full transfer. No clause, no reversal. Clean and final. And there was something else. Something I hadn't expected. An old document, buried deep in the county records database. My grandmother's will. I remembered her well. She'd died when I was in my early 20s. Sharp-eyed. Blunt. She used to press a folded bill into my hand when my parents weren't looking. For emergencies, she'd whisper. I opened the scanned will with a strange, sinking feeling. It was clear. Painfully clear. The house was to be split evenly between her grandchildren. Evenly. Daniel and me. But there was an amendment attached. A later filing. One that shifted ownership entirely to my parents. With the explicit instruction that it remain in trust until both grandchildren agreed on its future use. I read that line over and over. Until both grandchildren agreed. They hadn't just betrayed me morally, they'd violated a legal condition. I sat there in the quiet, the hum of my refrigerator the only sound, and felt something settle over me. Not anger, not fear. Clarity. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Instead, I became very careful. I stopped reacting. When my mother finally called, her voice syrupy and false, I answered politely. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. She paused, suspicious. "You've been distant." "I've been busy." Daniel texted me once. "You're really blowing this out of proportion." I didn't reply. I met with a lawyer, quiet office, neutral walls, a woman with kind eyes and a voice that didn't rush me. And she read everything without interrupting. Every document, every timestamp, every forged line. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed. "They didn't just cross a line," she said. "They erased it." I asked what my options were. She listed them calmly: reversal of transfer, recovery of funds, fraud charges, civil claims. "And the house?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "That depends on how public you're willing to be." Public. The word echoed in my head long after I left her office. I thought about holidays, neighbors, extended family gatherings where my parents had always controlled the narrative. I thought about how often I'd been painted as difficult, distant, ungrateful. I started to understand something then. This wasn't just about getting my share back. It was about the story. So I waited. I gathered everything. Screenshots, certified copies, expert verification of the forged signature, audio recordings, legal ones, from voicemail messages my parents had left, casually admitting they'd moved things around without telling me. I let them get comfortable. They invited relatives over. Daniel renovated the guest room. My parents told people the house was secure now. I smiled at family events, said little, watched carefully. My father avoided my eyes more than usual. My mother overcompensated, touching my arm too often, laughing too loudly. They knew something was wrong. They just didn't know how much I knew. The confrontation was coming. I could feel it like a held breath, but not yet. Not until everyone was listening. The confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in the living room. My parents had decided to host a family gathering. Nothing formal, just a small dinner, my mother said on the phone. Her voice carried that forced brightness again, the kind she used when she wanted witnesses without admitting it. Daniel would be there. So would my aunts, an uncle, cousins I hadn't seen in years, and a few neighbors who'd known us since childhood. A full audience. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. The house buzzed with conversation when I walked in. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly. The smell of roasted chicken hung in the air, thick and nostalgic. My mother froze when she saw me. "Oh, you made it," she said, then quickly smiled. "Everyone, look who's here." Heads turned, faces softened, then sharpened with curiosity. I felt it immediately, that familiar sense of being observed, measured, placed back into an old role. Daniel stood near the fireplace, wineglass in hand, relaxed, confident, at home. "Hey," he said casually, "didn't think you'd come." I smiled. "I almost didn't." My father cleared his throat. "Let's eat soon." "No," I said. The word cut cleanly through the room. My father frowned. "What?" "I won't take long," I said calmly, setting my bag down by the chair. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "But since everyone's here, it seems like the right time." A hush settled. The kind that arrives not because people are told to be quiet, but because something in the air shifts and they feel it. My mother's smile faltered. "This isn't appropriate." "I think it is," I replied. Daniel scoffed. "You're really doing this now?" I looked at him. Really looked. The faint crease between his brows, and the way his jaw tightened, just slightly. "Yes," I said. "Now." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Thick, heavy, real. "I was treated like an outsider in this family for most of my life," I began. "That's not an opinion. It's documented. In finances, in choices, in patterns." My aunt shifted uncomfortably. Someone set a glass down too hard. "This house," I continued, "was never supposed to belong to just one person." My mother stepped forward. "Stop." I didn't. I turned to the group and held up a copy of my grandmother's will. She was very clear. This house was meant to be shared between her grandchildren, equally. Murmurs rippled through the room. "That's not—" my father started. "There's more," I said gently. I laid the document on the table, then another, and another. "2 months before you told me anything," I said, way looking directly at my parents now, "you transferred the deed into Daniel's name, permanently." Daniel straightened. "That's not your business." "It became my business when you forged my signature," I replied. The word forged landed like a dropped plate. My cousin gasped softly. My mother's face drained of color. "That's a serious accusation," my father said, his voice tight. "I agree," I said. "That's why I had it verified." I pulled out the expert report, then the bank records, then the loan documentation. One by one, I placed them on the table. No rushing, no drama, just facts. "You took the emergency savings," I continued. An account that still legally required my authorization. You transferred the funds to Daniel to secure his loan. My mother shook her head, eyes glassy. We were trying to help our son. You had to, I said quietly. The room was silent now. No clinking, no whispers. Daniel laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a victim. I met his gaze. You moved into a house that wasn't legally yours? Paid for with money you didn't have. Backed by a signature you didn't earn. His smile vanished. My father sank into a chair. He looked older suddenly. Smaller. I have already filed the necessary claims, I said. The deed transfer is being challenged. The funds are being traced. And the forgery. I paused. That's documented. My aunt covered her mouth. You mean charges? That depends, I said, turning back to my parents. On how you choose to proceed. My mother reached for my hand at last, gripping it tightly. We never meant to hurt you. I looked down at her fingers, familiar, trembling, then gently pulled away. Intent doesn't erase impact. Daniel slammed his glass down. So what? You're kicking us out? Making a spectacle? I nodded once. Yes. My father looked up sharply. You wouldn't. I already have, I said. I pulled out the final paper, the eviction notice. Legal. Filed. Approved. This house is reverting to its proper legal status, I said. And until the matter is resolved, no one is authorized to live here. My mother let out a sound I'd never heard before, half sob, half disbelief. The neighbors stared. My relatives avoided my eyes. Daniel looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You planned this, he said. Yes, I replied. I listened quietly. I gathered evidence. Hiem and I waited until the truth could no longer be rewritten. No one spoke. I picked up my bag. I didn't want this, I said at the door, but I won't carry your silence anymore. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, sharp and clean. Behind me, the door didn't close right away. And for the first time in my life, I didn't turn back to see who was watching. The house was empty within 30 days. I didn't watch it happen. I didn't drive by while boxes were carried out or pause at the end of the street to count the lights turning off one by one. I knew better by then. Some closures don't need witnesses. What I did see were the messages. They came in waves at first. Long emails from my mother, fragmented texts from my father, angry voicemails from Daniel that started loud and ended uncertain. I listened to one. Just one. You've destroyed this family, he said. His voice cracked on the last word. I deleted the rest without opening them. The legal process moved slowly, the way all serious things do. But it moved in one direction. The forged signature held up under scrutiny. The trust condition in my grandmother's will was upheld. The deed transfer was reversed. The money came back. Every dollar. When the confirmation hit my account, I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. Like a weight I'd been carrying since childhood had finally been set down. Not dramatically, but permanently. My parents tried once more to meet in person. They asked through my aunt, who called carefully, as if stepping across thin ice. They want to explain, she said. I understand, I replied. But I'm done listening. Daniel didn't try again. Pride, I think. Or maybe understanding. Finally, that the rules had changed. At the next extended family gathering, months later at a cousin's wedding, people treated me differently. Not warmly, not coldly, respectfully. They knew now. The house was sold the following spring. Clean transaction. Fair split. I used my share to buy a place of my own. Not large, not impressive, but quiet. Solid. Mine. On the first night there, I sat on the floor with a glass of water, No furniture yet, just echo and possibility. I thought about the child I'd been, the one who learned early to nod, to shrink, to accept less. I'm here, I said out loud. I've got you now. Sometimes justice is loud, public, sharp edged, and sometimes it's quiet. It's choosing not to explain yourself anymore. It's walking away without guilt. It's realizing that being treated like an outsider doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you were never willing to become what they needed to stay comfortable. They realized who I was too late. But I realized it right on time. And that was enough.